Hey everybody, how are y'all? Everyone's doing all right? Good, good. Well, my name is Jonathan Lucky. I'm from a wonderful company called The Zone, and we'll be talking a little bit about how can we use metrics to up-manage our stakeholders instead of the reverse, which is what we normally do is we use our classic Agile metrics to beat the team down, and we actually should do the opposite, is actually use it to lift the team up and beat up the stakeholders. I'm kidding, don't beat up your stakeholders. They're good people, they're really good people. So a little bit quickly about me. I am an American, quite obvious. Most people think I'm a Canadian, but I'm actually American. I've been with The Zone for 4 years. I've worked on projects in NBA, sporting news. Right now I work on video playback. In the past life, I used to be a part of the problem. I was a product manager. I'm kidding. But yes, I was a product manager in those days, sales, all those types of stuff. And back then in those days, we were doing everything very wrong. And I was the one driving engineers crazy. I was the one driving everyone else crazy until the engineers were miserable. I was miserable. The stakeholders were miserable. And then we learned that there was this thing called Agile that we thought we were doing the whole time that we weren't doing, like at all. And so we changed the way we worked. And so, yep, like otters, Star Wars, and I hate passive aggressive notes and waiting in line. So anyway, more important stuff. We're going to talk about why do we measure teams. We're going to a little bit of some examples of measuring teams. We're going to do a little bit of how metrics, and I'm going to be focusing mainly on some of the classical Scrum, Agile metrics that we often see, that we often use in our everyday lives, but there will be lots of other types out there that we'll discuss, given what you guys want to talk about. And then we'll talk about what are some things that we can do to prevent their misuse, as someone says, metric abuse or metric misuse or something like that. And there'll be, I apologize ahead of time because I'll kind of flow in and out of a few of these different things depending on the sections. So, why do we measure? Why? Can anybody tell me, why do we measure things? Why do we measure teams? Someone shout it out, go for it.
So we can beat them up and put pressure on them.
Beat them up, put pressure on them, work faster. Faster, faster. Yes, yes, that's a good one.
Always have a sword of Damocles hanging above.
Ah, yes, the sword of Damocles dangles above their heads, waiting for that deadline to drop on them so we can all say, we told you so. We told you to finish all your points at the end of the sprint. We told you. What are some reasons, what are some other reasons why we measure teams? What gets measured gets done. That's true. That's true. You don't know what's done unless you're measuring what's done. Go for it.
It's help planning, so you know what's to plan.
Yes, because how can we possibly have any planning of knowing what we're going to do if we're not actually measuring what we're doing? Oh, we still have some more people that are very anxious. I saw this guy's first hand. Yeah, go for it. To unify. Ooh, that's a new one. To unify the team, to say, hey guys, look at what we've done. Look at what we've achieved. Hooray. So this is all sounding way more positive than the sword of Damocles hanging up here. It was one more. We'll do one more. I think it was, or two more. We'll do you two. So go for it.
Yeah, so the people who are paying the money know when their product's going to be delivered.
Ah, the money bags, Mr. Moneybags, right? He's financing all of our lives, isn't he? We kind of forget that, right? That it actually kind of takes money to run these projects. So we gotta make them happy by giving them some numbers. All right, so we'll do you two. So go for it.
I was going to say in theory to be objective.
In theory to be objective, but we all know how that really turns out, right? And one more, go for it.
I was trying to say to make it a science, what you say to make it objective, right?
Sorry, say that one more time, sorry?
To make it a science.
To try and make it a science. Oh, you'll like my next slide then. That's a good transition because one of my good friends, who he doesn't know that I'm his friend, is Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Everybody knows who that guy is. Very fun, very cool guy. Has a really great podcast, by the way. And he talks about no science reaches maturity without measurement, right? Exactly. See, yeah, good transition. We planned that before we started this. No science reaches maturity. What we're basically saying here is, how can we possibly call ourselves a mature organization, a mature team, a mature project, a mature anything, if we're not measuring ourselves? It's really quite that simple. There's a reason why when you see, raise your hands if you have kids. I'm putting my hand down because I have no kids. But what do you guys do? You go, look how big you've grown, right? You're measuring your child as it grows, right? Because you're looking at the sign that your child is maturing, right? We ask people their age because age is a sign of maturity, but not always necessarily so. Measurement leads to improvement, right? So if we measure things, I think someone said something similar over there earlier, was that if we measure things, then we can start seeing behind the curtain of what's going on in the real world, and we can measure and we can start improving. So we want people to change their behavior. But as a caveat, we're not saying we're not trying to change the team's behavior. What we really want to do is to expose things to the team and then get them to change their behavior and decide how they want to change their behavior. Does that make sense what I just said? So we're not trying to change the team's behavior. We're going to objectively share reality with the team and then say, what would you guys like to do about it? And if the team says, we're perfectly happy not delivering, then, well, but at least they're aware, right? Same thing with stakeholders. We're revealing the truth to our stakeholders, right? And then we let them decide how they want to change their behavior. Because if it comes from you, if it comes from them, then they're more likely to stick with it. Whereas if it comes from you, it's just they're doing it just to make you be quiet. And we want people to own this stuff, right? We want them to own that metric. We want it to belong to them. We want them to go, yeah, I'm doing better. We want them to be the ones to update that board in the room because that makes sense, right? Because they want to improve. And these last 2 points don't quite fit here, but I threw them here anyway, is that it should take very little time to compile. Is anybody here spending more than an hour out of the week putting together stats for their teams? Raise your hand. Thank God. Oh, we have one hand raised. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yes, if it's taking you more than an hour to compile information about your team and to talk about what's going on in your team, something's very wrong. That means either information isn't readily available, or even worse, you're being charged with gathering way too much detail on those teams. It should just be on a wall, snap right up there. Anybody should be able to just quickly look at this team and say, yeah, we're ahead, or uh-oh, we're really behind, right? And it should always be tied to a goal. That's the most important thing. So who can tell me, what are some examples of measuring teams? What are some examples of how we measure a team? Go for it.
Story points.
Story points. Dun, dun, dun. The dreaded story point. Ah, yes, that is one of them. What's another one? Lead time. Yes, that's another one we use to measure our teams. What's another one?
Cycle time.
Cycle time. Good. Yep, cycle time, lead time go hand in hand. My friend that does a whole hour worth of reports every week. I'm kidding. I'm just messing with you. Ooh. Ooh, you're gonna like the next slide too. You guys are really good at this. We've been coordinating this all week. One more. So recite that one.
Consider football.
Consider football.
How would I measure them? The teams.
So you're using football to measure the teams. So like how often do they achieve a goal?
You're asking what are examples of measuring teams.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, well, yes, exactly. There we go. I see what you mean. Go for it. One more. Burn down charts. Cool. And I'll do one more.
I think it's, as a team, being able to achieve the final outcome, which could be putting something online, reducing the falls, increasing sales. Have we achieved that?
Yes.
We can burn a lot of story points, and we can build a lot of features, but we actually have not still achieved the customer and business outcome.
Yes, that's a big one right there is, yes, we could do a project that had 10 trillion points. We could do 1 billion points a sprint. But if we're not delivering anything, if we're not solving the problem, then what are we doing, right? So there's these things come in all types of things. So we've probably seen SMART goals before. All of you have seen burn up and burn down charts. We've seen velocity, we've seen cycle time, many things. You guys might not have heard, who has heard of the 20-mile march? Nobody's heard of the 20. This is an interesting one where they basically said, this is from a book whose author and name escapes me all of a sudden, but I will share that with you guys afterwards if you come to me. The idea of the 20-mile march is that if we needed to get across the United States, you sent 2 crews to try and hike across the United States. What would happen to those 2 groups? One group decided to, if it rains, they'd stop for the day and rest, and then they'd make up time when it's sunny. The other group said, we're going to march 20 miles every day, no matter what. Guess which team made it to the coast? The team that was consistent. Right, the first one. What if I mean, by the time you get to Oregon, all it does is rain. They'll never make it. But so the idea there is consistency. So here's an example of measuring team performance. How many of you have seen the Spotify health check? Raise your hand. Yep, many people have. For those of you who haven't, this is something that Henrik Nyberg at Spotify came up with as a way of getting teams, of trying to understand what are the trends in a team and what are the things that are happening in a team. What I love about using this is that it's not about us trying to impose metrics on the team. We're actually doing something psychologically quite clever. We're asking the team to evaluate themselves and evaluate things that are going on in the business, and then that in turn becomes the metric. Does that make sense? So this isn't about saying, Squad 2, look at how horrible they are. They're all red. It's actually Squad 2 has said, there are some serious issues here that we need to fix. What do we do about it, right? And we use this at DAZN, as a matter of fact, in which what we do is we look at all of the different teams across all of our different squads, and we go, what's the trend here? What is this telling us? And it might tell us that, oh man, the release process, oh man, the team is not happy with it, they're very frustrated. That should be a signal to everyone in the organization to say, we've got to do something about this. This is consistently a problem across the organization, right? So what we want to do is we want types of metrics. And this is an example of a metric in which the team drives. They don't realize they're driving the metric, but they're in the driver's seat here and they're communicating to the stakeholders. Mission is a good example of that, right? If all of that was red, then that's a clear thing we can tell stakeholders and say, guys, you are not being clear about the mission. That's why we're not delivering the right features and the right things to the customer, because there's no vision. So now that's the onus, is to say, hey stakeholders, let's sit down and really think about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to deliver, and why we want to deliver it. We've all seen Burnup Charts. That's an example of that. I'll get into how you can manage some stakeholders around there, but we need to show and reveal this type of information to the team. We've all seen burn down charts, right? So that's more internal to the team. And this isn't to say, hey team, stop that giant cliff at the end of your sprints. Let's stop having that cliff. It's about saying, hey guys, I've noticed that at the end of every sprint, there's this gigantic cliff. Are you okay with that? What's happening there? Now that opens up the question of the QA people going, yeah, because we have to scramble the last 3 days of the sprint to try and get everything done. What do we do about that, guys? See, that's different, right? Than us saying, God, just make your ticket smaller. Make your ticket smaller. It's like, hey guys, we've observed this. This is the reality that's happening in the world around us. What do we do about it, right? So that's the idea. Has anybody had the age-old argument of whether you should burn up or burn down? I'm not going to open up that can of worms today. But I would usually say you burn up because you're adding value. But anyway, I digress. So now make it super visible. How many people have their metrics, their KPIs, their roadmaps, all that stuff? Raise your hand if that stuff's super duper visible, meaning everybody in the organization can see it. I'm surprised not as many people raise their hands. We got a few out there. This is critical because most of your stuff sits where? In KPIs and stuff, on dashboards, inside of Confluence, where all documents go to die. Yes. Yes. We all keep that stuff there. And so that's fine. But there's a certain power that happens when you actually keep that stuff visible, right? So put it up on a wall. So this is an example in our Charlotte office, the team I came from, the NBA.com team, where we had put our Burnup Chart towards releasing the rebuild up on the wall. And one day, a C-level executive walked into that office, and was like, everyone's like on pins and needles, oh my God, he's here. And he comes in, he looks at this screen, and he goes, what is this? And I'm like, well, it's our Burnup Chart. He's like, what's that? I said, it's a chart that helps us predict, based off of real data, when we think we will arrive. And we think we'll arrive here on this day is when we'll be done with the rebuild. He said, well, according to all the reports I saw, it was this date. I'm like, yes, people have been communicating that date to you, but actually this is based off of real data. This is as real as it gets as to when we think we can get there. Every other date everyone else has been communicating has been a hope, not reality. I didn't say it in so many words. That would have got some people in trouble. But what it did is it created a conversation. But that's okay, right? It's kind of a scary thing for an executive to be like, but that's not what but we want to have those conversations. We want to reveal the truth. So, and that's why we have to embrace being wrong. Enrico Fermi, if anybody's heard of this guy, he came up with the Fermi paradox, which basically means that either we are the first sentient race in the universe or we're the last. And so that basically means, he talks about that there's two things, right? You can have a hypothesis, you go gather some data, and then your data will prove your hypothesis to be correct. But what can happen is that your hypothesis can be proven wrong. And that doesn't mean that you have failed. That doesn't mean you have lost. It means you've learned something, right? So it's okay for us to embrace being wrong. We gathered some data, we're off the mark. That's okay. We learned something. Try something new, right? It's okay. Just because we haven't necessarily met a KPI doesn't mean that we have failed. It means we've learned something new, right? And we should change and adapt to that. Maybe we should change the KPI. Maybe we should lower the bar all the way to the bottom. I'm kidding. How can metrics be used against the team? Throw something out there. What are some examples of using metrics against your teams? Go for it. Oh, yes. If you don't meet your OKRs, if you don't get your PDPs correct, you're out of here, buddy, or you don't get any money.
You're not as good as the other teams.
Well, see, this team over here, they do 3,000 points a sprint. You guys do 10. What is going on? This team over here, they estimate everything only like 1 point. They're really smart. They're a smart team because everything's only 1 point. You guys have 13s and 89s. What's going on here, right? What are some other misuse or abuses that people do with metrics?
Do you need additional training?
Oh, yes. You haven't learned all the things that you must learn. Therefore, you're not smart enough. That happens, right? This team is smarter than this team because they took these classes and you guys didn't, right? Or they took these trainings and you guys didn't. Estimations become deadlines because what happens is you have big room planning, right? You have big room planning, you kick off a project, everyone has fun, you go off, have drinks, and then you have a calculate your possibility of success or your possibility of all these things and risks, and outspits a date, right? Your stakeholders go, yeah, cool, they agree on that date, and then you never talk to them ever again about that date. And then 1 year comes around, you guys go, we're not going to make that date that we decided on a year ago. So we have to keep that updated, right? We have to continuously refresh our estimates, continuously refresh our information. We have to continuously communicate with our stakeholders to let them know. So what I love is one of you guys' major guys, which is Charles Goodart, in which he says, when a measurement becomes a target, it ceases to become a good measurement. So what does that mean? That means that once you say, by golly, you had better hit this number or else, guess what? You're gonna hit that number. You might not get the results that you want, but you're definitely gonna hit that number. And you have ruined everything. So when we say that points all of a sudden matter. I usually tell my team, if we've seen the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, points are like whose line is it anyway. They matter, but they also don't. The points are a function of distance that we use to try and calculate when we think we might land. Notice I said think and might, right? We don't know because that's not reality. They're just points, right? So bad metrics, right? The beating shall continue till morale improves, right? So bad metrics cause us to breed unhealthy competition. So when someone said, this team is better than that team. So now you've got teams fighting each other. When that happens, teams will start hiding information from each other. Teams will start duplicating work unnecessarily, though duplicating isn't always bad. Teams will start fighting each other, hoarding resources. Managers will start hoarding people and not sharing people. Information and ideas sever. The whole organization breaks down into this strange, siloed mess. No one knows what anybody's doing. It could lead to unethical behavior. I have a good story about that, about me personally. In my marketing days, we had to deliver a certain number of MQLs, marketing qualified leads, SQL, sales qualified leads, and various other things in our landing pages and things we were building. And so every Thursday, the dreaded meeting with the executive committee would come up in which we had to report on these numbers. And guess who bared the brunt of who had to bear all the bad news on Thursdays? It was me. So basically, they'd go, well, why haven't we met these numbers, Jonathan? Mr. Lucky, we are just really disappointed in the performance of this team. We are being buried by the weight of the incompetence that your team is causing this organization. Like that was every Thursday, just being beat down. So guess what started happening is we started saying, well, if we kind of adjust this calculation in Excel, if we kind of move this, if we kind of like make the chart kind of look like this, we add some fancy hearts and some smiley faces to the chart and stuff, then, maybe we can make it look better. So we started trying to make things look better than what they actually were, instead of going, we got to fix the problem, and how can we get the executive committee to help support us better? So we don't want the metric to be the goal. The metric's not the goal, right? The goal is the goal, not the metric. The metric supports the goal. How do we achieve the goal? So a good example of this with one of my teams once was when early days, they said, someone came along and looked at their stuff in a review and said, you guys don't commit to enough work. You guys should really push yourselves and commit to more work. So guess what? They did. But they didn't get anywhere near any of that done, right? So I said, guys, let's relax. Let's not do that. But someone came along and said, well, you guys are probably you guys are messing up your estimations and stuff. You guys need to do more work. That's the problem. You guys need to get more done every sprint. So guess what they did? Everything got estimated higher. So then that's a problem, right? So you got to be careful what you try to say to your teams, because they're going to make sure that whatever number you tell them to meet, they will meet it, but it's not going to be reality. And so we said, okay, guys, let's actually talk about what are we realistically doing. And then we started actually focusing there, and we improved and got better. Uh-oh, controversy. Gantt charts. Who loves Gantt charts in this room? Oh, no. All right, I got something to admit. I hate Gantt charts. I wish that Gantt charts, and I'm sorry, this is my opinion. It's not scientific whatsoever. I would love that Gantt charts would be banned from every software project ever. I want them all to go away. They must go. They must die. Let them go. Let them go. Let them go. Because the problem is, even if you're not doing a waterfall project of design and the requirements and design and build and test, if you're still using Gantt charts in these projects, what you're doing is you're creating false hope. Because if you're using, those of you who've used Gantt charts, what do you end up doing at the end of every week when it's time to update your reports? Let me slide this to the left. Slide, 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 right? So what we're doing is, what we don't realize that we're doing to our stakeholders is we're secretly building resentment. We're secretly disappointing them. They might not say so, but every time when they see that these bars are sliding to the right more and more and more, they're getting more and more disappointed. They might not say so, but it's happening inside of their minds. Throw this away. I want it gone. I know that's not always possible, both politically and functionally, but I would love this to disappear. So what are some things we can do to prevent metric misuse? Get the teams to define the metrics. People are really good. Well, who said people are remarkably good at doing what they want to do? Right? Someone very famous said that. You guys don't have to say it. So people are really good at doing what they want to do. And when we say, here, you tell us what good looks like, they're going to tell you what good looks like, and they're going to achieve it, right? So give it to them. Give it to the people. What's another one?
Ask the stakeholders how well the metrics have worked so far.
Ooh, very nice, very nice. That's a good one, right? So, hey, I know you guys said that the team needs to do at least 500 points a sprint. How's that working out so far? Have your teams been doing it? You're revealing the truth because you're saying you keep trying to fit a square block into a circle hole. It's not going to work. What's another one? Keeping them simple, right? Because sometimes because what do, right? We're very good at data. We Agile coaches, Agilists, Scrum Masters, whatever you want to call us. We're really good at crunching numbers, looking at data, tracking and monitoring. But the problem is sometimes there's too much of it. And so then what happens is we start sharing too much detail. And it's not the sake of we shouldn't share less detail for the sake of hiding things, but there's beauty in simplicity, right? So if we keep it simple, then that means the conversation is really simple, right? So keep it simple, keep it simple.
Get a good Scrum Master, strong Scrum Master who can push back on the stakeholders.
Yes, that's important. How many of you feel like you can push back on your stakeholders? You can have a very honest conversation with your stakeholders. That's good, a lot of you can. And that's really hard. And not every organization, unfortunately, endows us with the ability to have those very serious conversations. But we should express to our stakeholders the value of a Scrum Master. The whole reason why we're here, the whole reason why we get paid the big bucks, is to have these very difficult conversations, right? If these conversations weren't necessary, then they wouldn't need us there at all. That's the value that a Scrum Master brings, is to reveal the truth and to say, guys, this is what's happening. And I know you don't want to see it, but it's happening and we have to change before it destroys us, right? It's that urgent, it's that critical. So Bill Gates talks about you have to have an environment where problems can be discussed openly, right? So this doesn't work unless you have a safe place. So when I talked about my example with the marketing qualified numbers, it wasn't a safe place, right? Because I didn't feel like I could challenge things at first. You know, that changed over time. I won't bore you with the long tail story, but we became more agile later on and everything worked out, is the short story. But before that, it wasn't a safe place, right? Because we always felt like we were going to have repercussions against us, reprimand, retribution, backbiting, recriminations, all that horrible stuff. So you have to, the first thing, before anybody talks about metrics in your organization and all that kind of stuff, I would say, let me stop you right there. Is it safe in this organization? Before we talk about targets and metrics and numbers and all that stuff, is it safe for us to talk about this? Is it safe for us to be honest with each other? Can we be honest with the stakeholders? Can the team be honest with the stakeholders? Can the stakeholders be honest with the team? Because if that's not happening, then there's no point in tracking anything because it's all going to be a lie anyway. So let's not live a lie. Let's reveal the truth. So one of the things we said, so remember those Gantt charts? We threw them out and we said, well, let's try a delivery-focused roadmap. So we said, well, let's focus on, here are the bundles of things that we want to deliver. Here's the buckets of value. So we're going to do the Walter Jr. release. This is old. This is back in the Breaking Bad days. Good show, by the way. So we said, we're going to do the Walter Jr. release, and then we're going to do this release and that release and this release and that release. And we said, well, we have here, this is from a tool called AHA, which is actually quite a good tool. There's a capacity meter there. And we said, well, guys, we're trying to fit way too much into our MVP. We've double stuffed this thing way more than what we probably should put on the team to try and deliver. That's a lot. And make that clear. And so what we did is we sat this in front of the stakeholders and said, this is all the stuff you want to do and when you want to do it. But but you guys, the stakeholders, need to move these tiles in the spaces that can accommodate the capacity that we think we have. So lay it at their feet, right? So challenge them and then make them make the decision, right? Create the playground, create the framework, and then get them to make the decisions, because then they're going to stick with them and they're not going to fight you. Also, we should try, whatever you're doing when you're communicating with stakeholders, is show delivery, right? So sometimes we just show, here's what we have left, and here's what we got to do, and here's what we have left, right? What we want to do is we want to show that we're delivering. Anytime you communicate with stakeholders, show delivery. Hey guys, we've delivered login. We can log into the system. That's what we've managed to deliver. We've delivered the ability to create this thing, right? Show that you're delivering. Everything you're communicating to the stakeholders, show doneness. Because what that does is that is subconsciously computing in people's brains that, okay, yeah, they're getting this done. Oh yeah, they're getting this done. As opposed to normally what we do is we show what we have left. And then that sends a different message to people subconsciously. So what we want to do is show delivery. Everything you're communicating with stakeholders, show delivery. How many people have used or seen a story map? Yeah, so a story map is a great way of visualizing your backlog. Very often we do these nice story maps in the beginning in big room planning, and then we plug it all in a Jira and it all becomes one big list. Keep it up and show it. And in fact, find some digital way to show it as well. And then show the delivery. And literally what we used to do in our sprint reviews is we'd go, all right, guys, good. So we'd take a big marker and check it off. Check it off, check it off. And we said, guys, look, we're almost there. We're almost there to our next milestone. Isn't that really exciting? So we're showing that delivery. We're making what we're delivering very visible. Notice how I'm not creating false hope around time. What we're doing is we're showing delivery. Time is important, but that's what the Burnup Charts are for, right? They're giving us real data of what date we're going to land at each of these places, but we show that separately from here's what we're delivering, here's what we're delivering. And again, Burnup Charts are awesome. This is from a gentleman named Rob Froman. Rob Froman, did I pronounce that correctly? Yes, I did. So Rob Froman, great blog, really good Excel template for Burnup Chart if you're not using Jira, or this is a lot simpler than Jira's Burnup Chart looking. But you can show, hey, we'll land sometime between this date and this date, given how the team is running and given where we are. So you can illustrate the uncertainty. Don't be afraid to show the uncertainty to the stakeholder, right? And let the stakeholder know the longer we run, the more accurate this is going to get and the better our cone of uncertainty. You can even tell them and show them, like, this is our confidence interval in our information and our data as well. That's really important. And you can even show, like, oh, we're almost there. There's the red line. We're almost there. We're almost to the finish line. That's our due date, for example. You can use this as another example to show. So, hey guys, yeah, we started off the project. We started going. The team had to drop everything they're doing to deal with a production issue for 2 weeks. So that's where we lost momentum, stakeholders, and that's okay. And then but then the team ramped back up, right? And we started making progress, right? So it's important to show that kind of stuff. This is my favorite. We had a problem where we had a rebuild project and we had a BAU project, and the team we had one team doing both of these things. How many of you have been in that situation before? Yeah, we've all been there. So what we realized was that the team was really unhappy and it was taking forever. The stakeholders were like, the rebuild is taking so long, the rebuild is taking so long. So what we did is we said, at the end of every sprint, we put up a simple pie chart just like this and said, we work on BAU work 75% of the time. We spend 25% of the time doing rebuild work. And every sprint, we showed this chart to stakeholders. Every single sprint. Once again, guys, we've only spent 25% of our time on the rebuild. And then what you do is you offer up some options. And you say, guys, stakeholders, if we keep running like this, if we keep holding this old jalopy together while trying to do a little bit on the rebuild here and there, you guys will have your brand spanking new Cadillac in 5 years. Yeah! They didn't like that. But I said, but guys, what if we spent 100% of our energy on this rebuild, we will get done in a matter of months. Now, stakeholders, do you want to wait 5 years for your Cadillac, or do you want it in 5 months? You guys decide. Lay it at their feet. Show them the options and lay it at their feet, right? They may very well decide, you know what, keep the jalopy running. But at least they have made an educated, conscious decision to do so, and everybody understands why that's the case, right? So they may make a decision that's not what you approve of. However, they've made that decision very well aware of how it's negatively impacting what they want. Even illustrate it using, you guys might have seen this in some of your Agile training documentation many years ago. Even illustrate it using this. Feed your project into these blocks and show how this is what context switching looks like. Hey guys, if we keep context switching, you guys will get all your stuff later this year. Whereas if we were to work like this, focus and deliver, prioritize, we'd actually, somebody's gonna still get their stuff towards the end of the year, but somebody's gonna get their stuff sooner. So then lay that at the stakeholders' feet. Imagine if we did this, stakeholders, what would that look like? And stakeholders, now all you have to decide is which group do you want to go first? Do you want to come first, right? Which group do you want to get their stuff first? That's more powerful. So the future's clouded, and that's okay. Carl von Clausewitz is the guy, you ever heard of the term fog of war? Carl von Clausewitz was the guy that invented it. And, well, not invented it, but wrote about the concept. And the idea from here is that it's okay if the future's a little bit clouded. It's okay, right? And we should train and train our stakeholders to be okay with a certain level of uncertainty, right? And we can communicate that in numbers some way, somehow, like the percentage of your project that's unestimated, right? Or something like that. We should train our stakeholders to be comfortable with a little bit of uncertainty. And we should build up trust with them by continuously delivering software in short intervals, right? So train them to be okay with a little bit of uncertainty. So remember, towards the end here, is don't use your metrics against the team, use them against the stakeholders. I'm kidding. Use them to manage your stakeholders, get them to understand what's going on. Get the team, don't allow the business to compare velocities. Don't allow the business to talk about a project in terms of number of points, because that's not valuable. Talk about the features and what they do for the customer, right? Don't allow the metrics to promote unethical behavior, right? Fudging the numbers, changing this and that. It all sounds innocent, but soon enough, we're all just living a lie. Don't allow the metric to become so important that it becomes bigger than the goal. The goal is what is important, not the metric. So if we can, right, we should try and make sure we need to be goal focused. Don't talk about metrics unless you have goals in place. And every goal should be tied, every metric should be tied to a goal. If there's no goal, there should be no metric. They should be super easy. It takes less than 5 minutes to compile. It should be sitting on a wall. Everyone should see it. Everyone should have access to that information. We should be continuously updating and reporting this and showing this to everyone, right? Remember, we need to communicate frequently. A guy named Bob Petruska, he once said, less is more when more is less over time, meaning that we need to communicate very, very frequently in small chunks to our stakeholders instead of dropping bombs on them, right? So constantly communicate to them. So finally, measurement leads to improvement, says Neil deGrasse Tyson. And Enrico Fermi says that we need to embrace being wrong. And Charles Goodart talks about we need to achieve goals and not numbers. And then Bill Gates says we have to be safe in order to properly measure. And Carl von Clausewitz talks about how it's okay that the future is clouded. We have to deal with it because that's just the nature of the fog of war. So I thank you all very much.